All right, there we go. Hey, everybody, it's Katie Harris, owner and CEO of NursePreneurs, and this is another episode of the NursePreneurs podcast. And today we are welcoming Teresa Sanderson back, who many of you know from being in the Facebook group. She's a marketing guru. So, Teresa, thanks for being with us.
Oh, excited to be here, always.
Awesome. So today we're going to kind of focus on some the legal landscape for nurse entrepreneurs and, what they should be thinking about. So, let's get started. So, Teresa, what do you think about the question around the right business structure? When nurses ask you this question, how do you answer that?
First of all, I try and remind nurse entrepreneurs that sole proprietorship is indeed a form of business ownership. I think we can bite off way more than we need to right out of the chute before we're even sure, exactly is business going to be for us long term, because the first 5 years of any business are the most challenging, right? And so I see a lot of nurse entrepreneurs invest a lot of time, energy, and money in the arduous process of, do I choose an LLC? Do I choose a corporation? What about S Corp? All these different things, when in actuality, you can begin as a sole proprietor, just doing something called a DBA, doing business as whatever business name you choose, working under your social security number. So while there are businesses like, for instance, med spas, aesthetics, you're doing invasive type treatments, things like that, then definitely you're going to want to be LLC or possibly a corporate structure. But if you're doing something maybe more like what I'm doing, which is a lot of, consulting, coaching, online courses, you can definitely get started in the sole proprietor space.
Yeah, and it's much easier and way less expensive to do something like that. But yeah, you're right. And it always confused me, like, what is an S corp? What do I do? And I still don't really have the answer, but I know for Nursepreneurs, we started with the LLC,
Mm-hmm.
and then when it got to the point where I brought myself onto payroll, it made more sense to become an S corp
Mm-hmm.
taxable entity. So we're
Yep.
still an LLC, but we elect as an S corp, and all that stuff starts to get confusing. And I'm not real,
Yeah.
all of it myself, to be honest. But to get started, like on day one, I don't think anybody needs to be an S corp. The LLC versus the sole proprietorship, I think is
Mm-hmm.
good. But like you said, in infusion companies, med spas, they're definitely going to want a little bit more protection with an LLC.
Definitely, definitely. And back in the day, when we started our brick and mortar hospice, that was, yeah, it wasn't a choice, sole proprietorship. We needed the protection, and we actually did a formal corporate structure with the S corp as well. But today, I'm in the same position you are, as an LLC with S corp for tax purposes, which, you know, honestly, I didn't even know that was a thing until.
Where the accountant brings it up, like,
Yeah,
oh, you should, be an S corp, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, but
yeah.
and I still don't know what it means, but apparently I save all my taxes with it. So
Yes, it's a way of avoiding being taxed twice, from what I understand. The S corp allows that business income to be funneled to our personal income instead of being taxed as a business entity and then also being taxed on the individual level.
right, which is
That's
the
really
double tax problem of the LLC, because the business gets taxed, and then if you pull money out, you get taxed.
right.
Which does lead into the next question of, like, understanding some of the tax obligations and how to deal with them, because
Mhm.
um, that is, oh my God, talk about a big subject. Taxes,
Yes.
it's a nightmare.
Yeah. And I am not an accountant. I'm going to say that right away.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
No. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a great accountant that, he's really inexpensive. So he does all my bookkeeping, and then he does all my taxes,
Love
which
it.
is really nice, because a
Mhm.
lot of people won't do city taxes in Philadelphia. And,
Yeah.
I've gotten screwed a couple times there because I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I just don't understand the language that they're asking me
Mhm.
for. Do you know what I mean? Like, you read
Mhm.
these forms and I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, you bring such a great point, though, that there are certain things that we can't skimp on in entrepreneurship. When you need an attorney, you need an attorney. When you need an accountant, you need an accountant. So it's important to know, to grab those resources. And I'm with you. One of the things that has really transformed our business in the last couple of years is the book Profit First, Michael
Oh,
Malkovich.
yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, and just allowing you to, from every bit of income that comes in, to divide it to these different accounts that you need, one of them being solely for preparing for taxes. And
Hmm.
I think, yeah, I've never seen such a clear-cut method of how can I be prepared for all of the things. And that Profit First book was recommended to me by a friend of mine. And yeah, we've been using it ever since, and now we have a bank account that cooperates with it, and just, when money
That
comes
was the
in.
hard part, was finding the bank account to cooperate because you could only have like one
Oh,
checking
yeah.
account. And I'm like, but I need five.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's interesting about that, I think I read that book in 2020, and at that
Mhm,
time, it was I don't think I was really paying myself, or I was terrified to use any money other than
mhm.
just pay bills, because I couldn't tell what was mine or what could be mine and what was already spent,
Been
because
there.
I didn't have those numbers laid out. And Profit First helped me enormously. Like, it was such a relief to be like, yeah, this is profit that, I can actually touch and take, because everything
Mhm.
else is covered. And that helped so much.
I agree, and I feel like it's a trap that we fall into as nurse entrepreneurs, and I think it can happen to any entrepreneur, I think, but as nurses, typically we don't have the business acumen to know how do we allocate, from the income that's coming in, how do we really manage all of that? And so we have the tendency not to pay ourselves. And nothing can be less gratifying than working your heart and soul, pouring yourself into your business and not pulling out any money,
Right.
whether to just pay yourself or whatever. And I remember my husband Greg said to me one time, he said, Teresa, I don't know anybody who would ever want to do what you do. And I thought, well, that's, it was like one of those aha moments on, thank you for saying that, because obviously something needs to change. And it's only from, when people are honest with us and say things like that, that we have the opportunity to change. And so, but it was a great opportunity for growth and moving into that profit first mentality of pay yourself first,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
It's really not, in a lot of ways, it's not worth doing. I mean, the first year is always kind of
Mhm.
rough, but I mean, you do, even if you built in something really small, maybe you pay
Yeah.
yourself $50, or, just
Yeah.
something, just getting into the habit of paying yourself and then increasing
Mhm.
that, because your expenses, if you treat your salary as an expense to the business, like, that has to be covered. I mean,
Yeah.
you could never sell a business if the CEO wasn't making any money. Like, that's just a
Exactly.
flags all over it. Because, like what you just said, nobody would want to do that job.
No, no, and I think that's another thing too, though, that we have to be very careful of, as nurse entrepreneurs is, and this is a little bit off the subject, but is not just to create another job for yourself that you're not going to enjoy.
Right.
This is really that opportunity. So paying yourself is important. Figuring out when you're going to take time off and how you're going to be able to take time off is really important. And that comes into the financial piece too, of, how am I going to be able to do that and keep
Yep.
my business running? So.
Yeah. Another question we get a lot is around legal permits, licenses, and, I mean, from what I understand, there's obviously the you have to declare the business at the federal level. You declare it at the business level, and then, for me, I'm in the city of Philadelphia, so they want a piece of the pie too. So I had to get, a city license. But some of these boroughs and municipalities and towns, they do want you to have some sort of license. I had a woman out in California where the county came in and made her shut down for, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 weeks until she got a county permit and that she had no idea she needed.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
yeah, so that can be, and that was an IV hydration business. So that kind of stuff can be a nightmare. Do you have any like tips on figuring out what type of permits and licenses you actually need?
I think that's a great question. And yes, I would just say, first of all, be thorough in your due diligence. The national thing, getting your EIN number is like the tip of the iceberg, as
Hmm.
far as it comes down to this. So we notify there, then you set up some type of, you decide on your business structure, whether or not you're going to be sole proprietor, LLC, corporation, whatever. But then this is the point that it's important to maybe look into. It's usually the Secretary of State's office within every state that is going to have guidance and support for any new business that wants to get started. Now, this is the business side of things. It doesn't have anything to do with, any medical licenses or certifications or anything else that may need to happen. So you're going to have two things running kind of concurrently. You're going to be looking at what does the state require, and then also what does maybe my licensing board require, what does CMS require, those kinds of things, because there are going to be different sets of regulations. And that's the thing, is to really just do all that due diligence up front. And if you have any concerns that something may be needed by a county or a city, ask the questions before you start.
Yeah.
These are things you don't want to be caught on the tail end with and having to shut down for a couple of weeks or worse. Worse things can happen. So yeah, just do all that due diligence up front. That's the best thing that I can suggest for sure. And also maybe consulting an attorney, a
Yeah.
business attorney along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I always hate consulting the attorney because it costs me like $1,000 every time I send an email. But,
Yeah.
and I get that, but, it's better than, because a lot of these agencies don't have that kind of like mentality for I don't know, I didn't know answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they hear that all the time, so they don't
Yeah,
have much sympathy for it.
yeah, let me just fine you instead, yeah.
Yeah. But the other two that I'm thinking of, like some of these clinics, especially, need to maybe consult with the Department of Health.
Yep.
Or I actually invited OSHA into my. It's not a med spa; it's a wellness center, but I
Mhm.
invited them into to tell me what was wrong with it, and they were supposed to come out in August, but then I guess they had budgetary cuts and they decided they didn't have
Mhm.
any money to come out and see me. So I'm like, well, I guess I don't have to worry about OSHA doing a surprise visit because I can't even get them out there by request. But
Uh,
those, I really wanted them to come out because, I think that
yeah.
kind of stuff is important. And a lot of the OSHA departments will do a complimentary consultation if their budget doesn't get cut. So,
Mhm. And yeah, and you bring up a good point, because my business is all digital. So I don't have any brick and mortar space anymore, but when I did, it was important to be in compliance with fire regulations. So, the fire marshal may need to come out. I had adult group homes running at one time. We definitely needed OSHA. We needed the fire marshal coming in. And then the state came in and certified various things and surveyed us. So it's just important to be really familiar, dive in. And it's also something that can be helpful for people too is visiting people or places of business that are already in business doing what you want to do.
mhm.
That's another great, it's a great shortcut, network with people in the same space if you can, and hopefully get some guidance on what to look out for.
Yeah, because it's not always nicely laid out for you. And because there's so many different places, like, I mean, first you have 50 states in DC, then you have, all the different thousand, like, how many cities are in the United States? Hundreds of thousands of cities. So nobody knows all the details because that's,
Mhm.
when people come in and they're like, well, what about, I live here? And I'm like, I couldn't even tell you, that would not only be a full-time job, it would be like a full panel of full-time jobs to keep up on that. And it's a moving target. Like everything
Right.
changes,
Always.
and it's your duty to keep up with it. And for somebody to keep up with that is like ungodly. It's like it's a lot of work.
Agreed. Agreed. Whole lot to do there.
All right. So, what about what do you think are some essential documents that people need to have for their business?
Definitely, any service provider, if anybody's providing a service for you, you would need to have a contract or a service agreement in place for that. Service agreements and contracts are essentially the same thing. However, the word contract tends to carry a lot more weight than service agreement. So, but it's important to have specifics laid out, especially when you are in business and you're paying someone to do something for you. You're going to want to have a very clear contract that delineates, what are you paying and what are you getting? Okay. So this goes both ways. You may issue contracts at sometimes, and some points, others are going to be sending you contracts. So it's really important to evaluate them and know what's in them. How can you cancel? What happens if it doesn't work right? All of that stuff is going to be very important. So that's really, contracts are important. I think for serving clients as well, it's going to be some type of contract or agreement. What do you use in your wellness center for patients and clients that you see, Katie?
Yeah, so I mean, we have informed consent that we use for different procedures. If I am signing somebody up for a program in my clinic, we do have a contract that delineates it out so that there is no room for interpretation, right? It's you'll get 3 60-minute phone calls, or you will get something very specific, because I've seen people say, oh, well, we'll do unlimited phone calls or unlimited Zooms or unlimited email. And I'm like, yeah,
That's
no,
tough. Yeah.
that means they can call you whenever they feel like it, as many times as they want, and you will always get one person who will take you up on it, and
To the
not
nth
even know that they're
degree. Yep.
abusing it at some level. I mean, because you said unlimited, right? So
Yeah.
they can take that and run a mile with it.
Agreed. Other things that are important in any kind of business, definitely if you have people working for you, then of course you're going to need things like position descriptions. You'll need formal offers. You'll need things to document performance appraisals and things like that on. You will also need, gosh,
I was thinking for like the website, you're going to need a privacy policy for your website. You need terms of use of the website, and you can get a lot of this stuff online. There's templates, there's Rocket Lawyer, there's all kinds of stuff that you can get this from.
Absolutely.
We have a refund policy, and we also have affiliate. So we have an affiliate disclosure on our website as well.
Love that. Yeah. And in the tech world, in the online space, there's just new things that have popped up like that. So, but that's all really, just really good summary there. Love that.
Yeah. The other thing that we have, Teresa, and maybe you have this as well, but we put on our NursePreneurs site an earnings disclaimer, related to some of the testimonials, because, people share their stories, but we're also saying, one, the nurses, we give 100% credit to the nurses doing them. We support them. We give them the tools. They can use them or not use them. But, what they've done is 100% their effort, and the amount of time and that they put into it. And some of them have been extremely successul. It just doesn't, it doesn't mean that's going to happen to you unless, because it depends on your experience level. It depends on how much effort you put into it and how much business acumen you have.
Yes. And that is really important, because, and it's funny because you can never tell what people are going to do. I'm sure you've seen it as well. I have some people who invest in a course, never do anything with it.
Right.
And others will just take it and run with it and have, just incredible things going on. But you just never know. But I mean, that one's not rocket science. If you don't do the work, if you don't put in the effort, you're not going to get much out of it. But you're right. We have to have those disclaimers out there that say, this may not be typical. I think that's what they say anymore.
Yeah,
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 results may not be typical.
right.
Mhm.
And they're certainly not guaranteed.
Yes.
It all comes down to how much you're willing to put into it, like you said. Now,
Yeah.
you had mentioned employees and employees, but employees and contractors. What's the difference, do you think, between the two?
Oh.
That's that I grappled with that
One's a lot
before,
easier than the other. Yeah, employees, these are your typical. This is what you see when you go into a clinic type setting or any facility setting or even a restaurant these days, where people are paid X number of dollars per hour to be in that physical location typically, or even remote these days working from home. But it's an hourly rate for a certain number of hours every day, considered usually part-time or full-time. We do have some people who are PRN. Now, with our employees, though, there typically is an expectation of benefits. So we need to look at that. And typically, I think the usual estimation is about it's called the benefit burden, is usually about 32% above and beyond wages. And so that's, on the shoulders of the employer, and that covers things like your retirement plan, your insurance, and those kind of things. So, and also with employee benefits, there's paid time off and, a lot of things. So every employer is going to have a different benefit pack based on what they can afford, that kind of thing. Now, contractors on the other side, and this is all I do use in my business anymore. I have a lot of contractors under me, and the contract employee, it's not even an employee, but the contractor, then I'm able to say, I need you to do this task. Here's what it includes, and I need it by this date. I don't care when you do it. I don't care if you're in your pajamas when you do it. I don't care. As long as when I get it by that date, it looks like everything I've asked for, I'm going to pay you a fee for that. And all of my contractors pretty much are on a flat fee for service type basis. So if they write a CE course or do an application or whatever it is that they do, I pay them a flat fee for the work that they do, and they just get it to me on time and high quality. That's all I'm looking for. So yeah, for people who are contractors, it's incredibly flexible. You can set your own schedule, do the work on your own time. And that's what a lot of people really like about it. And they're willing to exchange the benefits in it, to swap that out for the flexibility that they have in the contracting space. So that's a lot of freelance type work.
Right. And plus they have the opportunity to say no, like you're not going to, the employee doesn't really have the ability to say no unless it's unethical. But, if you're like, I need this brief, and they're like, no, I don't feel like it, that would not be acceptable for an employee. But for a contractor, you can't force them to do things because you're paying them, by a flat fee. But, I think it's definitely an area to be. I think it gets really, really gray in the clinic setting, especially when you do have the PRNs maybe less gray, but if you're going to hire like an MA and say they're a contractor, or I've heard of a lot of nurse practitioners who get hired into a practice as a contractor, and it's really starting to skirt around the employee kind of like designation.
Yeah, I think it's a lot tougher to have a contractor in a brick and mortar setting, just because you have to be at a certain place, number one. And there was a big, this was back in the day, maybe 2008, 2009. There was a big labor dispute with FedEx, I think it was, because they were calling all their drivers contractors back in the day. But they had to drive a certain kind of truck. FedEx only has a certain kind of truck. They dictated their uniforms, the kind of socks they wore, everything. And that was massive because, of course, they were not considered contractors when that came under review. They were employees.
Yeah.
So they had to make, that again, do your due diligence up front, right?
Yeah, as of like right now, I think Amazon does have, because when I order same day Amazon and I want it by 2 o'clock or something,
Mhm.
you'll get somebody in a plain clothes car that just drops it off at your house. And,
Yeah.
maybe that is a contractor. And also thinking of Uber and Lyft, I'm wondering, I don't, are they considered employees? Do you know?
I believe they're contractors. Yep.
Yeah,
Because they pick and choose when they'll show up, when they'll
right.
drive. Yeah.
And if they want to take a particular
Mhm.
case. All right. Well, what about protecting ideas, patents, trademarks, copyrights? I've had a lot of people ask me about this. Like they want to set up their LLC and then trademark it. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe not right now.
I
Is
love
that
that.
really what you want to spend your time and money on right at this moment?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, patents, first of all, those are for protection of ideas, maybe inventions, things like that. And for instance, I know a gal who's developed a new linen system that takes the pressure off for hospice and terminally ill patients. So she's actually going through the patent process with that idea. One of the things to know about it is that it is laboriously slow. It's really, really slow to get through that process and also very expensive. You have to have a prototype developed and all the things. But that is for inventions. When you get into trademarks, you're looking at typically brand names, company names, things like that. Um, so, nursepreneurs, you've trademarked your
I did not. So I
name
tried
yet?
to
Okay.
in 2016, I went to do a trademark and
Mhm.
somebody was in the process of trying to trademark it. And then,
Okay.
my lawyer contacted their lawyer and we decided that neither one of us would trademark it. And then a couple of years later, I'm like, that's dumb. So I went back and, went to trademark the name. And
Mhm.
my lawyer was such a pain in the ass and so expensive that I gave it up. And to this day, I still haven't gotten around to
Okay,
trademark.
okay. Well, I have a resource for you. We'll have to talk about that. But, I just got my, new brand name, Nurses Feed Their Young, is trademarked. It just came through in September. It took about 18 months to go
Oh
from
my
start to
god.
finish. Yeah, it's a long process, and that's one definitely hire it out. But I did work with a great company, and it didn't cost me an arm and a leg, so I was really pleased with how it all turned out. But yeah, trademarking is, I want to be able to use that Nurses Feed Their Young brand name and know that no one else can use it. So
Right,
that is intellectual property and it is now protected for me.
right,
Um, but does everything need to be trademarked? I think we need to look at, how likely is it for someone else to use, like when my company was named Teresa Sanderson Company, do I need to trademark that? Probably not, because I doubt there would be another one out there,
right.
or why would anybody want it? So you have to kind of be realistic and say, is that investment I really need to make? Um, so that's something to consider there. Copyrights, this is all about your written intellectual work, everything from your blog post, what you have on your website, anything that publish written as a book or otherwise. Copyrights can protect what you have, although I think it's getting tougher and tougher for a copyright to really be enforceable. I
Mhm.
think, people are seeing that, gosh, my stuff's ending up everywhere. And even though with the best of technology where we can keep, documents and things within our websites, that doesn't stop people from screenshotting and sharing, or, there's all kinds of ways that copyrights can be infringed upon. Um, but that is, in essence, what copyright is all about, is protecting any written works, whether
Right.
those be online or otherwise published. So,
Yeah. So, and it's not something that certainly not calling the lawyer to copyright my blog post.
no.
Not
And
happening.
anymore, yeah, it's as simple though as having a copyright statement at the bottom of your web
Yes.
page anymore. It's not something that, yeah, back in the day we had to go through an attorney and send things into the US Copyright Office, and that's just saying how old I am, but yeah, you don't have to do that anymore. Not quite that difficult.
Yeah. So in terms of insurance, I mean, I'll say that I did have business insurance for a while, and then when I had an opportunity to use it, they were like, "Oh, no, we don't cover anything like that." And I'm like, "Well, that was the only reason I had business insurance in the first place. I'm not talking malpractice insurance. I'm just general business, online business insurance.
Yeah.
Do you have something like that?"
I do. I do. I have a small, it's like a professional liability policy and um, online business policy. It's not very expensive, but I do have something. And I also have some insurance that kind of protects us in the event that I'm sick or incapacitated or anything. And that comes down to something that's called like key employee insurance. And it's just a little safety net that, if you need it, if I were to suddenly pass away or something like that, that it would be income that would come in, insurance money that would come in. It would give, my husband, our family, an opportunity to kind of shift gears, put someone else in the role and let things keep going or whatever they decided to do. So there are some really good things to look into there when it comes to, the longevity of your business and that kind of thing.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So for my wellness center, absolutely have business insurance, and we have a property insurance, and I've got a lot of machines in there that are very
That.
expensive.
Uh-huh.
So all that has to be insured. And so, yeah, I mean, that's an absolute must. And then obviously malpractice. But, I think
Mhm.
even if you don't have a business, you should be investing in malpractice insurance for yourself,
Mhm.
because you're just not going to be able to depend on your employer if you're in a malpractice suit with your employer.
Very true. We're seeing that every day.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, after the
Yeah,
Redonda case, I mean, that
just
everybody,
terrible.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
So what about, privacy and patient data, like staying compliant with that?
Oh gosh.
Do you have to deal with that with your clients?
I'm not working in a patient service area.
Okay.
So, yeah, I am outside of that. Can I say blissfully outside of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but yes, I am fully aware of HIPAA and all of the requirements there and the fines that can result if we're not compliant with that. So, vitally important. You have to have your notices that go out to your patients and talk to them about how their data is used and what you do to protect their privacy, all of those things. Um, and have your processes in place to really safeguard that info.
Yeah, and your EMRs are going to be HIPAA compliant. Our NOLA is HIPAA compliant.
Mhm.
Your Google and Gmail, if they have a HIPAA compliant, you have to sign the business associate agreement, which is as simple as, going into your admin. I mean, you could Google it and it'll show you step by step what you should do. But that Google Drive and your Gmail should be HIPAA compliant as well, especially if you're using it to speak to patients.
Love that. Love that. Yep. Good information. Good information for sure.
Right. Let's see. Resolving disputes. So I know you're pretty lucky that you haven't had too many disputes, but
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on if somebody's complaining or they want a refund or they're just not happy with with
Mhm.
what they've received?
Sure. Well, I think it's, again, I believe in the Boy Scout mantra, be prepared, right? And so, as much as possible, make very clear your refund policies. Like you were saying, you don't want to leave things up to interpretation. You want your forms, your documents, and things to be very, very clear that people are signing when they start doing business with you. So, definitely negotiation, that initial discussion to just kind of start the dialogue. What is it? What is the problem? What are you looking for? How can we support? Whatever. Finding out what the issues are and how you can resolve them. It starts there. Now, you may also need to take steps for mediation and or other legal steps along the way. Just depending. I mean, if a contract was clearly breached or if someone's just trying to, skip out on a contract, you certainly have the opportunity to take legal action.
Hmm.
We have to do the evaluation, though. What's my investment in legal services going to be for what I could get out of this thing? So there's all of that, and those are some tough things. But I think the best advice there is, being as prepared as you can be going in, and creating, maybe even having some checkpoints along the way. If you're doing a
Yeah.
service that lasts over a period of weeks, how do you feel like things are going? How satisfied are you with what you've got right now? Are there any questions? Is there anything that you don't believe you've received yet that you thought you would have received? Those opportunities to do service recovery while you're still in the process of serving your client may
Yeah.
be helpful.
I think that's a good point, because most people, they have a hard time suing people they like. I mean, it certainly happens,
Yeah.
but it's much easier if you're just kind of this kind cold corporate-y like face, and the perception is, their purchase doesn't matter, and it's not going to matter if they refund or if they complain or whatever. And especially if you are a small business, but you're coming off as, I want to say, corporate, because some people feel like they need to pretend to be a corporate business as opposed to a one-woman show. That's kind of mistaken in a lot of ways.
Yes, I agree. I think when we can bring the human element in and just connect with people, then, our risk can be so much lower. I think one of the best things that we can do is, when we know or get a sense that something is going awry, immediately address it. Immediately start talking with the client about it, because when we wait, it just allows any feelings or thoughts or ideas that they have to fester without us having the opportunity to fix things, when most things can be resolved. But if we don't take action, if we, out of fear or whatever, because let's face it, nobody likes confrontation, but this allows us to resolve the issue, serve at a higher level. And many times you'll find that if you solve a problem for a client like this, they will become your biggest raving fan.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah, actually, Sarah on my team, Sarah, she loves that. She thinks it's the most exciting challenge, is to take a patient or a client that's really upset and turn it around. I'm like, oh my God, like, thank God for you, because that's terrifying to me.
It's true. Thank goodness everybody loves something, right?
What is it? There's a lid for every pot, right? All right. Well, so I think this is a good overview, especially on, really getting the business together, and all of this it's not always the sexy part of business. It's something that you have to lay the foundations for, so that it's there, and you don't have to go back and redo it. You don't want to have to go back and redo any of this stuff, or get called by the county and find out that you didn't have permits that you were supposed to need. So, like you said, the due diligence is going to be vital. If you hit on all of these topics that we just talked about, you're going to be in really, really good shape starting out your business, whether it's a completely online business or a brick and mortar or some kind of hybrid, and everything in between. So,
absolutely.
All right, Teresa, any last thoughts?
No, I don't. I guess the one thing that I always share with nurse entrepreneurs is, begin with the end in mind. And so, even though we've talked about a lot of foundational things in this episode, if you're just starting a business, where do you want to be 3 years from now or 5 years from now, right? Is your plan to grow a business and then sell it? Is your plan to grow a business and just continue to work it? What is it? Because, back in the day when we owned our hospice, I had 2 or 3 calls every single week of somebody saying, "Hey, Teresa, we hear you're substantial, Northeast Kansas, would like to buy your hospice, got a buyer for you, whatever." And I would say, we'd never sell, we're just not going to sell. Well, I'd have been a retired millionaire at age 45 if I had begun with the end in mind, but I didn't do that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So hindsight's 2020. But I share that because I don't know that anybody ever thinks of, am I just going to build a business, perhaps maybe to sell it?
Right.
Because there are people doing that every single day. But whatever your vision is for your business, begin with the end in mind, course correct every single day, and you
Yeah.
make it. Yeah.
No, that's great. And I knew a nurse who all she did was set up home care agencies. She never ran them. She just set them up, got all the certifications done, and then sold them.
Yep.
And I was like, I didn't know that was you
It's
knew.
a
You knew that.
thing.
You mean I don't actually have to run the home care agency? You just set it up. But that's
Yeah.
like that. I mean, setting up a home care agency is a crap ton of work. So,
Indeed.
all right.
Love it.
Well, more words of wisdom. So, thank you so much, Teresa, for being with us. And thank you, everybody, for
Of
listening.
course. Thanks, Katie.